By all accounts, Steve Rogers is considered the leader of the Avengers. If anyone else could lay claim to that title, it would be Tony Stark. But even he generally defers to Rogers.
Lab's all set up, boss.
Oh, actually, he's the boss. I just pay for everything and design everything and make everyone look cooler.
What's the word on Strucker?
In a team full of alpha characters, it's worth taking the time to figure out why all these take-charged superpowered team members recognize Captain America as their leader. A leader among leaders, one might say. Now, I say it's worth taking the time, but there's not enough time, especially in the educational microdosing environment we find ourselves in today, especially here in YouTube, right? So rather than cover every leadership attribute, I'll instead focus in on something that is not always immediately considered a leadership trait. You see, when it comes to leading a team, Rogers possesses all the traditional characteristics that make an effective leader. He's one of the few members of the team with formal military training and experience, and he studied military strategy and tactics even as a private. He also grew in his leadership skills as the leader of the Howling Commandos in World War II. He's a man of high integrity with a solid moral compass, is empathetic, thoughtful, cool under pressure, and is a symbolic inspiration to many. So yeah, at the end of the day, when it comes time for the Avengers to assemble, it's Captain America who sounds the clarion call.
Assemble.
These are just a few of Steve Rogers' leadership bona fides, but the one I want to explore today, the one that doesn't often get the same press as all the others, is Steve Rogers' balanced perspective. While it may be tempting to say that Rogers sees the world in terms of black and white, good and evil, this isn't necessarily the case. He holds a perspective that allows him to see more nuance in the situation. This in turn allows him to find innovative solutions where others couldn't even see the problem in the first place. Let me show you what I mean. Sees nuance and context. Captain America's broad perspective keeps him from jumping to reductive conclusions. Where others see simple right and wrong, Rogers understands that nothing is really as simple as it seems, and this being the case, time and patience should be given to better understanding the situation. For example, in Avengers Age of Ultron, when Maria Hill remarks how nuts it is that the twins would volunteer for Strucker's experiments, Rogers gives a more nuanced assessment of their circumstances.
Right. What kind of monster would let a German scientist experiment on them to protect their country?
We're not at war, Captain.
They are.
Understands the nature of power. Steve Rogers has almost a non-plus relationship with power, whereas many of the other Avengers, such as Tony Stark, Stephen Strange, and even Peter Parker to some extent, they're always trying to figure out how to gain more power, how to increase their power. However, Rogers seems almost indifferent to the idea of power. He knows that seeking power doesn't often turn out the way that you had hoped it would. For example, he brushes aside his own power when Bucky asks for details.
It's permanent. So far.
And even when faced with a power that's clearly beyond his own, it doesn't even seem to register with him.
I'd sit this one out, Cap.
I don't see how I can.
These guys come from legend. They're basically gods.
There's only one God, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
In fact, to Rogers, power has very little to do with physical strength, fancy tech, or special abilities. Power is something that is within.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
I know guys with none of that worth 10 of you.
My take is he's referring to the Howling Commandos here, but that's just me. Now, one thing he does know about power is that most people shouldn't be trusted with it.
Is there anything you can tell us about the Tesseract that we ought to know now?
You should have left it in the ocean.
He expresses concern over how people will use the Avengers and the power they can project when talking about the whatever Accords. I forget the name of the Accords. You know what I'm talking about.
This is the United Nations we're talking about. It's not the World Security Council. It's not SHIELD. It's not Hydra.
No, but it's run by people with agendas, and agendas change.
He even has a special sort of, loathing for people with power and misuse it.
Do you want to kill Nazis?
I don't want to kill anyone. I don't like bullies. I don't care where they're from.
Focuses on what's important in the moment. Captain America doesn't allow himself or others to get distracted by side quests. For example, when Ultron, let's say version 1.0 in the form of the beat-up Iron Legionnaire, when Ultron takes off with the scepter, that's a problem. That's the problem. So when Thor returns without the scepter and begins to accost Stark, Rogers has to intervene. Sure, Thor is justifiably upset with Stark, as no doubt is Steve, but that's not the immediate problem.
Whoa. It's going around.
Come on, use your words, buddy. I have more than enough words to describe you, Stark.
Thor, the Legionnaire.
Unlike Thor, Rogers is able to keep his frustrations in check and focus on the clear and present danger, in this case, the missing scepter. In other words, Rogers knows how to regulate. Likewise, when Steve Rogers is rescuing the men of the 107th, he doesn't take time in explaining who he is, since, that's not important right now.
Who are you supposed to be?
Captain America.
Same thing happens when Bucky sees his friend for the first time since the procedure.
What happened to you?
I joined the army.
Sure, these are some great lines in the movie, but at their core, they show Rogers focusing on the mission at hand, namely, getting the men out and escaping with his friend. The same can be said for when he's asked if he knows what he's doing.
Wait, you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I've knocked that Adolf Hitler over 200 times.
No, he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's not going to let that stop him from doing what needs to be done. And would taking the time to explain to the captured soldiers that he's little more than a USO dancing monkey hawking war bonds help the situation? Not likely. And what kind of question is that anyway? Do you know what you're doing? What do you care? You're out of the cage, let's get the hell out of Dodge. Unless you'd rather stay behind and wait with somebody with better credentials to come along and rescue your ass. No, the question isn't important. Neither is the answer. So Captain America just cites his numerous encounters with Adolf Hitler and gets on with the job. So yeah, think about how you can integrate some of these characteristics into your own leadership style. Bring a little Cap into your life. All right, so that's all I've got for today. Now go off and make some trouble. The kind that Steve Rogers would make. We'll see you later.